Good evening, everyone. Just bear with me. I'm finishing setting up, putting links in YouTube and all of that. Just trying to find what the link is. So let's see. Because that was again. Just bear with me. I'll be with you in a second. Any second. I miss the old version of live streaming. It was easier. Let's see. There we go. Got the link. Now I can close this. Almost ready. Just gotta share it to the various pages. And there. Okay, we're good to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I've been promising to do another one of these Kevin soapboxes, and for one thing, I want to explain what my intention with these is and why I call them Kevin soapbox. So those of you who've been watching the show for a while know I do a lot of informative episodes. I do a lot of interviews, but I wanted to start a series where I would talk about more personal things, more philosophical things, some things about theology, that kind of thing. Instead of my main series, obviously Thursdays I'll still be doing my show, but in addition to it, and the first one I did a while back was over the conference that's going on this weekend in Orlando, Florida, called "Make America Straight Again." Don't worry, this is not going to be more of me ranting and raving about that. Although my feelings haven't changed. It's absolutely horrible. People deserve. My friend Cyrus the Skeptic has a great video on his channel of many different LGBT plus people saying they deserve to live, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. Nobody deserves to die over this. It's ridiculous. But I wanted to talk tonight about my beliefs. Why exactly I'm Christian as opposed to atheist or pagan or Buddhist or any of the many, many thousands of other religions that are out there, and which denomination I am for anyone who's wondering. I'm not, and I want to be clear, and I put this in the description. I've put this on the Facebook posts. I'm not trying to convert you to believe what I believe or to agree what I have to say. That's not the point. If there's only one thing I want the people listening to hold to of my belief and philosophy, it's the basic principle of we need to be compassionate towards one another. And you don't have to be Christian to understand the importance of that. Most people do. That is my. If you want to take away some proselytizing from that, that's all. That's the only proselytizing I have to give is don't be a jerk. But I did want to give people insight into why I believe what I believe, just in case you're curious. Maybe I'll give you a little insight into why I do the show, into why I get so passionate about certain things. I had friends watch the first soapbox video, were more than a little surprised how upset I got, and that'll get that. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into my thoughts about other people's beliefs and why I don't try to proselytize to people who don't believe what I believe. So there are two reasons why I'm a Christian. One is both are actually pretty simple. One is very personal. One is theological. So the personal thing is both a combination of my belief about the universe and my experience. I accept science. I don't question that the Big Bang happened. The evidence is too strong for it. I don't question that evolution happens. It's literally happening all around us. I don't question. Well, I question abiogenesis, the life from the basic building blocks way back thousands of years ago, only because it's a hypothesis. Biologists and chemists and things of that nature aren't saying it's settled science, so people shouldn't treat it as such. Um, I like to describe how I feel about abiogenesis as skeptically optimistic. I think it has some value. I just don't think, again, it's not settled science. That's why it's a hypothesis, not a theory. Um, but I have a very hard time accepting that everything came about by chance. And I know, I mean, evolution in particular isn't chance. There is an actual deciding force, which is natural selection, among other things. But the chances of life appearing on this particular planet, of the right combination of chemicals happening at the right time, assuming abiogenesis is completely true, of all the millions of things that had to be right about the galaxy, the solar, the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, to support life like ourselves, I just don't accept that it was a cosmic dice roll. I mean, I know there are other possibilities, the multiverse theory, that there are many universes where all these different possibilities all happened. Um, I find that interesting, but I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying it is true. Again, people have a misunderstanding of the idea of being skeptical. Just because you're skeptical doesn't mean that you dismiss an idea. It means show me. Um, and honestly, if we found out tomorrow that parallel universes existed, I mean, if we actually could go a la the old TV show Sliders and slip into them, I'd probably still believe in God. But we are the best to the best of our. The other argument people make is that if we had developed elsewhere in the universe, we'd just be different, and we'd be looking at the Douglas Adams argument of a puddle that forms thinks of how perfect everything is for that puddle. The hole in the ground, the ditch, or the hole in the ground, or the um, puddle. That's the word I'm looking for. It's just the perfect size for that puddle. Temperature is just right for that puddle to exist. The other example I've heard used is, let's say it's June and I live in New Jersey, so obviously it's warm weather. But let's say that it was the middle of December and snowing outside, and I walked outside and there are billions of snowflakes, and because it's snowing, the odds that any one given snowflake would land on my nose are incalculably small. But it happens. Again, this is why I believe in God. This is not my argument for why you should believe in God. Keep that in mind. I'm not trying to convince you, I'm just explaining my reasoning. I understand that as much as I can because I think my experience, humans have a lot of trouble with probability. I've never taken it in college. I don't find, because it happened, a compelling argument. And for that matter, we don't know. Good scientists admit we don't know the cause of the Big Bang, what happened before the Big Bang, um, which certainly leaves open the possibility of God. And again, I don't know does not mean therefore God. That's not my argument. But I do believe God factors into the equation somewhere. Um, I am a somewhat deistic. For those of you who don't know, a deist is a person who basically believes God started the universe, set everything in motion, set up the laws of physics, and then went on vacation. He doesn't directly involve himself. It isn't that I don't think God involves himself. I think he does, occasionally. But I think it's very rare, and I think most of the time, if God involves himself, he uses natural processes to do it. People have asked why. Why doesn't God just violate the laws of physics? It's a good question. I'll be honest. I don't know. Then again, the best I can answer, and I don't think it's a good enough answer, I'll admit it, is if you can go through all the trouble of setting up a universe that behaves by a set of rules, why just arbitrarily go about breaking those rules? Particularly if you can get what you want accomplished without breaking the rules. You know, I guess in a programmer sense, and any programmers who start laughing at this, feel free to correct me in the comments or in the chat if you happen to wind up listening. But in a programmer sense, we write a program for a video game, say, and you want to give characters, say the character, a new type of sword. Are you going to rewrite the entire code of the game just to add the sword, or are you going to change a small part of, alter the sword that's already there a little bit to look like you want it to look? I would think, based on my extremely limited knowledge of coding, that just working with what you got makes more sense than scrapping it and starting over again. Which isn't to say God couldn't just break the rules, ignore them entirely. I'm just saying I don't think he chooses to. So that's one half of why I believe in God. That's part of why I believe in God. Another part of it's just a matter of experience. I've been a demonologist for more than 20 years now. I mean, I started when I was 18. I'm 42. I'll be 43 next month. Yeah, sadly, I'll stop being the answer to life, the universe, and everything. I'm more than a little disappointed. You can't go through those kinds of experiences without realizing that some power greater than ourselves exists. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to conclude that power is Christian. I've worked with pagans. I've worked with other religions that get results using their own deity. And who am I to judge that mine's right, theirs wrong? I know a lot of people who have had experiences of the divine that don't fit mine, but I've had experiences of the divine that do fit mine. This is a big part of why I don't proselytize, by the way. Particularly to other religious folk who aren't Christians, because it doesn't apply with atheists. Atheists I just don't like being a jerk. But who am I to say their experience of the divine is invalid, and mine is? I think that's very arrogant and very condescending. That's why, again, my standard, what my expectation from other people is, try to be compassionate towards your fellow living beings. If you can do that, we're okay. If you're gonna be a jerk, we have a problem. So there's another, but that's the experiential side of why, and the semi-logical, I suppose, side of why I believe what I do. But there's a more fundamental theological reason why I'm a Christian over something else. I find religion fascinating. Be it my religion, be it somebody else's religion. I find what people believe and the reasons that they believe it absolutely fascinating. It's one of the reasons I do the show. And especially when I was young, when I was in college, I studied religion extensively. I was considering it as a second major. But there's something, in my opinion, and if you disagree, again, comments are welcome. Even if you don't like what I have to say. Just, that's a good thing to mention. My rule on comments, I won't tolerate hate speech. I won't tolerate slurs. Beyond that, say whatever you want. I don't, and I'll try to avoid profanity. If it gets extensive, I'll delete it. But by and large, I don't care if you think I'm an idiot. I really don't. I don't care if you want to call me stupid, crazy, a con artist. I've heard it all before. I don't really care. But here is what I see as unique about Christianity, although it's true about Judaism as well, in different ways, and I think it's true of Islam to an extent as well. Christianity, in my opinion, is built on the fundamental belief that everyone has the no one's beyond redemption. Everyone can be saved, no matter how wicked, no matter how screwed up in the head you are. There is a God out there who does love you, and He is open to helping you change. In Buddhism, and I don't. Again, I'm going to go through a couple of religions and show what I see as the difference. I am not trying to insult those religions. I'm just giving my opinion. Again, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But in Buddhism, if you want to reach nirvana, if you want to end the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, you have to. There is no sense of redemption. It's about living your life according to the Eightfold Path, living your life in a moral manner. Now, I'm not saying that living your life morally is important. I'm going to circle back to that. But there is sort of this idea, and it's common in a way many people see Christianity, but I see it as inaccurate, of a balance of your soul, and if you're good enough. You know, in Greek mythology, you know, if the very good go to Elysium, the very, very wicked go to Tartarus, most other people just kind of exist in a perpetual state of boredom. Um, but again, it's on how moral you are. I'm trying to think of other examples. Hinduism is very similar to Buddhism about the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Um, Most religions are built on this idea of it's about what you do, and I'm not disparaging that. I'm not. Let me be clear. I am not a salvation through faith only Christian. I think that idea is not biblical, and I think it's deeply flawed. Because the Bible says faith without work is dead. Now, I've had many of the salvation through grace Christians who will tell me, oh, but if you have faith, the works will come. I don't buy it. Saying you believe something, saying you want forgiveness isn't good enough. You have to make the effort. Is the effort going to be enough? I don't believe so, but you still have to make it. You have to walk the walk as you follow my meaning. That it's a combination of God saying, I will forgive you whatever you've done. But you have to show me you're sorry for what you did. You have to try to make amends. Amends can't always be made. That's the reality. And for that matter, when someone who dies who's been a very bad person, they may feel genuine remorse. But it's not about what you say. It's not about what your name on a list in a church of members or how often you go to mass. I'm not Catholic. It's about here. It's about what you believe. It's what if in your heart of hearts, if you know what you've done is wrong, if you do anything you can to make up for it, salvation is waiting, in my opinion. That to me is the brilliance of Christ's message is the come as you are. God loves you. God will forgive you if you ask. That and that is what means so much to me. That is what I find brilliant. That is why I'm a Christian. Is that idea that God is just going, come in. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. To quote the Bible. Um, I prefer worshiping a loving God who judges you not just on what you do, but about your ability to understand that you make mistakes, that you're not going to get it right, that no matter how hard anyone tries, myself included, you're never going to be the perfect person. And that's okay. Again, I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I don't think I am not a person who thinks that if you don't believe what I do, you're going to hell. I believe in hell, and don't mistake me about that. But it is actually, I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine who I'm going to be doing an interview with at sometime in the hopefully near future. Lisa for Truth has a very good channel, and while addressing again, I don't want to make this about the NFP again. While addressing the NFP, she points out that their presumption, their judgment of homosexuals, is blasphemy. It is not our place to judge people. That's God's job. There's a really good old cartoon called God, the Devil, and Bob. You know, it's God's place to forgive people. It's our place to love people. Um, and that's another important aspect of this. I think, and it's an aspect I think people gets misunderstood, not just by non-Christians, but by Christians. It's another important component of all this is being willing to forgive people who do something to you. Now, it's forgiving, and then there's being a doormat. I'm not talking about being a doormat. You know, if, you know, to go to an extreme example, if you're raped, you don't have to, I'm not saying you have to be best friends with your rapist. I'm not saying you ever need to talk to that bastard again. But holding on to anger and hatred isn't in your own best interests. To me, when I say you need to forgive others, often I mean something entirely internal. It's letting go of your anger for your own, and it's as much as anything, it's for your own mental health. You know, there's the saying about anger that when you hate someone, you let them live rent free in your head, and that's not good. Again, this doesn't mean you have to be stupid. This doesn't mean you go back to the abusive husband. It doesn't mean you associate with the rapist. It certainly doesn't mean you don't go to the cops. So Auntie H says, "Hi, I think I found you from Virgo. Dove Hearts Dove, enjoying your channel very much. Thank you, Auntie H. Yeah, I love Virgo Triad. She's an absolutely wonderful woman. Everyone listening, if you're not familiar with Virgo Triad, go check your channel out. Subscribe, share. She has a lot of really good information out there for people, and she's a very nice lady and a lot of fun. You can go back through my video library. You can find several interviews she's done with me. Want to talk to her a little and want to talk some more about doing some more collaborations. But she's a very nice woman with a very good head on her shoulders. I'm trying to think if there's what more I can say on this subject. I think I've covered a lot of what I want to say. Um, Again, my point here is that this isn't about being, more than anything, I think it's about being decent to each other. Um, be the sort of person, yeah, to put it in the words of a very good friend of mine, be the sort of person Mr. Rogers wanted you to be. That if I was going to make a universal religion, that would be it. Is to be don't be a jerk. Um, on which note, I'll also say another really important point to me, and I think I'll do a future soapbox video about this, is because of my somewhat fluid definition of Christianity, and also because I'm a student of history. I don't want my beliefs enshrined in law. I don't want anyone's beliefs enshrined in law. One of my personally most important values. One of the things I consider one of the greatest ideas of human history is the idea of secularism. It's not a government not an atheistic government, because that's not secular. That's not properly secular. Not a government like communism, where religion is banned and outlawed, but a government where the government stays out of religion and religion stays out of the government. What the U.S. was meant to be. Doesn't mean that people in government can't be religious. They certainly can, but they shouldn't make decisions based on their religious beliefs. They should make decisions based on common good. They should make decisions based on compassion and based on the most fundamental idea that all humans deserve basic rights and respect. That's how I think government should run. This informs a lot of things for me. You know, I believe that same-sex marriage should be legal, both because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but also beyond that, there's no good reason why the government should be that involved in anyone's life. It's not who you choose to marry, as long as it's between consenting adults, is none of the government's business. Um, I don't want to get into all of my thoughts on this one, but very similarly, I don't want the government involved in abortion either. I'm not its biggest fan. Um, I think an argument can be made that it is often what I would call a necessary evil, but it does serve a purpose. And when the government's gotten involved lately, it's made things worse, not better. Um, keep the government out of it unless it's absolutely necessary. That doesn't mean I'm not a sovereign citizen. I do think we should have taxes. I do think we should have traffic laws. I just think when it comes to your personal business, it should be your personal business, not the government's. Not the federal government's, not the state's government's. This is why I call myself a classical conservative, a true old school conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. I'm a conservative. Small government. The less the government gets involved in people's lives, the better for everybody. And I wish modern conservatives would remember that tenet of conservatism, instead of thinking that conservative is another term for Christian, or for worse, Christian theocracy. Theocracy does not work. If you don't believe me, study world history. Heck, don't study. If you don't want to study world history, look at Saudi Arabia right now. And how many of the things that it does that most of us look at and rightly go in art, that's insane. And the fact that women weren't allowed to drive cars up until very recently. That, homosexuals being put to death. Abortion, of course, is illegal. Any religion except the state religion you're not allowed to practice. They will, that is criminal. You know, if you changed the religion in question from Islam to Christianity, there are lots of Christians in the United States that would move tomorrow, because they don't object to a lot of the extremes. They object to which God's on top, and for that matter, it was true when the Catholic Church held sway. It was true when the Puritans held sway. When Here's a fundamental problem and why secularism is so important. Even when it's your denomination, not just your religion, but your denomination that's running the show. Think about your past. If you're Christian, Here's something else apply as appropriate. Think about your pastor. Do you agree with everything he says? Every word that comes out of his mouth? Every interpretation he has of Scripture? How about, if you're part of a larger denomination, how about other pastors in your denomination? Do you agree with all of them? Do you want what they say is God's word to be law? Think about something they say that you don't agree with, because I guarantee there's something. Unless you're in a cult, there's something, and that's okay. You're allowed to disagree with a pastor. They're not God. And if you're not allowed to disagree or ask questions, I highly recommend you think long and hard about the sort of group that you've become a part of. Go watch my video on cults and look at the bite model, or look it up online. But I have met many I was taught in my life by a wonderful, godly man named Pastor Joseph Brose. He was a good man. I respect still him deeply. But we didn't agree on everything, and there are things that he stood for I would not want to see enshrined as law. There is no human I have ever met, no group of humans I have ever met, I'd want to see their ideology, no matter how well intentioned, enshrined as law. It doesn't work. Because, and yes, that includes mine, even my personal. Like, no, I don't want that power. And here's the other side of it. You're a Christian. You think you want Christians running the government. You don't care which denomination, but as long as they're Christians. Okay, think that through logically. For example, if we're gonna make the U.S. government the type of Christians that are the dominant Christians in the world, the denomination that makes up the majority of people who are Christian, you realize that would make the government Roman Catholic. And I know. There are lots of non-Catholics who say the Roman Catholic Church is not Catholic, or is not Christian. Excuse me. Obviously, it's Catholic. If you take it that way, then Christianity is not the dominant religion on the planet, because a large percentage of people who are identified as Christian are Roman Catholic, Orthodox, Anglican, and Orthodox is not the same as Catholic. Anglican is not the same as Catholic, but they have more common with each other than they do with Protestantism. Do you want to answer to a Catholic authority? Okay, if not Catholic, you want to go with the religion of the founding fathers. A lot of them were deists. If you want to go with the first settlers, a lot of them were Puritans. The U.S. is still suffering under the fact that we have a history of being puritanical in our religious beliefs. Look at how being a woman being topless in the United States is seen compared to how they see it in Europe. Even in Italy and other very, very Christian parts of Europe. That the Puritans were nuts. The Puritans hanged people on the made-up idea that they were witches, because they weren't. You don't want them in church. Baptists, all the other denominations out there, Presbyterians, etc. Don't think, if you're going to think about a theocracy, don't think about it being your version of your religion that's in charge. Think of it being one of the ones you don't like and you don't agree with it. If you're Christian, think about it being one of those denominations you don't see as Christian. Think of a United States run by the Westboro Baptist Church, the group so extreme the Ku Klux Klan says they're a hate group. But they call themselves Christian. They call themselves Baptists. Do you want to answer to them? To people that say God laughs when soldiers die? That's why I'm a secularist. Religion running the government never, never, never ends well. I think that's going to about do it for tonight. Um, Again, this is kind of the way these videos are going to be. It's going to less be me trying to inform and me potentially ranting and raving. It feels like I did at a few points there about something on my mind. I can't. I'm going to try to do about one a week, or at least one every, or one a week or every other week. But it's really going to be more when I think of a topic I think is worth talking about, that I have something to say about. There are certainly other ones. I mean, I want to talk more about the importance of secularism. I want to talk. I'm. I've considered talking about abortion, but it's like that's a really sticky mess. I don't want to get involved in. But let me give you a little food for thought, because I think it's always good to give somebody think something to think about. And I want to give both sides of the abortion debate something to think about, without coming from completely down one way or the other. If you're pro-life, consider this. I am an first. Let me preface this hypothetical with the fact I am an organ donor. I think everyone should be an organ donor. But if I die tomorrow and I don't have organ donor listed on my driver's license, my body could be buried in the ground to rot with every organ I have intact. There are 114,000 people in the United States on organ donor lists. New ones added every minute. If you truly consider yourself pro life, not just anti abortion, why does a dead body get more respect for its autonomy than a living woman? Think about that. I'm not telling you what to think. I just want you to think about that. If you're pro choice, let me give you something to think about. If a woman is pregnant and a man beats her up and she miscarries because of that assault, did the man just commit assault, or did the man commit murder? The law says he committed murder. Me and most other people, including most pro-life, pro-choice people, would say he committed murder. Logically, though, the, if the unborn child isn't living, why is it murder? And again, I am not saying abortions should be illegal. I am not saying this is an argument against abortion. I'm saying this is something that's worth thinking about in evaluating your own morality and your own ethics about how you see unborn children, or fetuses if you prefer to call them that, and how you see abortion. And the reason I'm giving you this as something to think about is because I think it's good to be challenged about why you believe what you believe. Why you think things are legal, or should be legal, or are ethical, or should be ethical, instead of just saying it because, you know. And I'm not saying there isn't a good answer to this quandary. I think there is. Um, but I think it's worth thinking about why you hold the answer that you do, instead of a different answer. Again, I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not saying I don't know what your answer is. You may have a good one, you may not. But it's worth thinking about why you have the answer that you have. And this is true for pro life people as well. Think about my question about organ donation. For that matter, you want an even simpler, less dramatic example? Why is donating blood voluntary? For that matter, why is receiving blood voluntary? People can refuse to take a transfusion for religious reasons. Jehovah's Witnesses die for it. Audrey H says regarding my hypothetical says, has he not committed both? I believe in abortion for me. I do not, excuse me, I apologize. I don't believe in abortion for me. I do believe each woman has their own choice. I agree. I think he's committed both. But again, but specifically for people who don't believe that a fetus is a living person with any rights, why has he committed murder? I believe my if you want my answer, Audrey or Auntie, excuse me, not Audrey, Auntie H's second part sums it up pretty well. I do believe that women have their own choice. I do believe that while I'm not a huge fan of abortion, like I said, a world where it's illegal is not better than a world where it's legal. Because women will still get abortion. Women have been getting abortion for quite literally thousands of years. Outlawing it won't stop it, but it'll mean more women die in the process. And I don't want that. And also, I just don't think it's my business to tell women what to do with their own bodies. I don't believe it's the government's business to tell women what to do with their own bodies. Um, and particularly, I think it's a good example to point out. What was I going to say? Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Here's another thing I think that's worth pointing out. However you feel, women don't really use abortion as a form of birth control. There's simpler, less expensive, less invasive, and less dangerous options. Although, for goodness sakes, I think we need to make. I'll get to that in a second. Um, you know, but there's also the reality, especially people talk about, well, what about the third trimester? Why is it acceptable that a baby that could be born can still be aborted in many places? Yeah, here's the thing about that. Because when I first heard about that, I was like, that's insane. Why would you wait that long? Why, you know, waiting a couple of, certainly waiting a month, 2 months, maybe second trimester, I can understand. Particularly because of the reality that, um, you know, and this is one of the problems with some of the laws that have been passed recently. If a woman's pregnant, she's not going to know about it for at least 4 weeks, maybe more. And some of the states have said it's up to abortion's only legal up to 6 weeks, which means effectively abortion's illegal because most women aren't going to know they're pregnant at that point. Um, but while I'm a great believer in people are responsible for their own choices, for one, rape victims should never be held responsible for the choice of a rapist. To their credit, some of the states that have passed these anti-abortion laws have extended the minimum date that you can get the abortion for if you have a police report on your rape. I don't think that's good enough because women don't want to. I don't think we should force women to report to the police. I think women should generally report rape to the police, but if they're not comfortable, they should never be forced to. And it shouldn't be, well, if you didn't report it to the police, you're SOL. Particularly given the disastrous way our culture handles rape. But aside from that, 99% of abortions happen in the first trimester. Not the second, not the third. I may be off on the 99%, but the overwhelming majority of abortions that take place in the second trimester are for medical reasons. And actually, I think that's the 99%. The 90%, 99%, yeah. Most abortions are in the first trimester. About 99% of the ones in the second trimester are for medical reasons. Which means very few abortions take place in the third trimester, and it's not. It's for women. Don't you don't? I could be wrong, but I don't think women generally carry a baby for 7, 8, 9 months, and then decide, oh, I don't want a baby anymore. To think they do is my opinion irrational. People don't go put themselves through that much discomfort and then change their mind on a whim. And the ugly reality is there are a lot of medical reasons why an abortion might be necessary. Keep in mind, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage already. I knew somebody who was very close to somebody who had to have an abortion for medical reasons and went through hell because one of the medical personnel involved didn't believe in what she was doing. And for God's sakes, it was literal. It wasn't. It literally wasn't in that case a question of maybe she'll live if she doesn't, if she carries the baby. Maybe she won't. It was the baby was going to die. Either she had the abortion or they both died. There was no third option. There was no one in a million chance that maybe she would have survived. And in fact, when she actually had the abortion, the baby was already dead. But medically speaking, that's still an abortion. This is why the government needs to keep its nose out of it. Women that need one for a medical reason shouldn't have to go through legal red tape because some guy decided he knows better what they should do with their body. And I want to try to avoid this topic just because of how controversial it is. Oh well. That is going to do it for tonight. Folks, I want to thank you so much for joining me and listening to me rant and rave about my beliefs for almost an hour now. I do want to say very briefly that as I've said many times, and yes, it was on NTH, what the whole Make America Straight Again conference is morally deplorable. I haven't heard news yet. I've hoped and prayed to God that the people who went down there as a counter protest have been safe, because the independent NIFB, the New Independent Federation of Baptists, the people behind it, have openly admitted that some of them will be carrying, and they are happy with the fact that Florida is a stand your ground state, where if they get attacked, they can shoot to kill. I have two prayers about that situation. One is for the protesters to be safe. I don't want anybody getting shot standing up for what's right. And the other is actually for the NIFB. I pray that God will open their heart and open their eyes and make them realize what they're doing is wrong. That is, in fact, going to do it. Folks, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to, if you enjoyed the show, I do ask, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. I want to go back to doing it in the studio. To do that, I need help. If you can donate to the Patreon, please consider doing so. Patreon.com/demonology. If you can't, like I said, you can do an enormous amount of good for the show just by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing. If you don't like me, feel free to downvote me and tell me in the comments too. And here's the secret if you don't know it already. Downvoting, negative comments, also helps a video. It still boosts our numbers. That's why you could find there's a video I did a while back about exorcisms. The guy was like, oh, this guy doesn't know, has a lot of opinions and is all talk and should tell more stories. And my response to it was basically, "Hey, thanks for boosting my metrics. Please feel free to tell me why you don't like my other videos in the future." Yeah, I could be a smart aleck. But yeah, that's it for tonight. Thank you all for listening. Have a great night. God bless. Stay safe.